the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thanks, Joe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mike? All in favor? Aye. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from July 12th, 2021. I'm looking for a motion to approve or amend those minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mike. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Now we move on to the appeals. The first appeal on the agenda is from Ken Katz, 25105 West Roy Court for a variance from section 40-4.03 R1A through R1E, one family district schedule of regulations to exceed the required rear setback of 35 feet by having a 14.95 foot rear yard setback for the purpose of an addition to an existing non-conforming building. I call upon the applicant to go ahead.
Rick is our builder.
Okay, if you could step to the podium,
Yeah,
sir,
if you guys
please
could step
introduce
up and-
yourself.
Rick Cassian, Bills Point Builders. So we're asking for a variance. There's an addition on the rear of this property now. It's going to be approximately 6 inches further toward the adjacent property and the length of the back of the house. So we're asking for that variance.
Was the existing addition put on by the?
No, that has not been put on by the homeowners.
So just 6 inches?
From where the existing addition now.
Actually, the way that it works is the existing addition is non-conforming. So when you lose a non-conforming structure, the theory is that the non-conformity is no longer extended. So you would have to come back to the zoning board of appeals in order to get the whole area approved.
Just to tear off an existing non-conforming and start over?
Right, because once you lose the non-conformity, it has to be granted again by the zoning board of appeals, and we don't have any record that it ever was granted, so there wasn't anything like that. It's certainly not much more than was there, but for your purposes, it's allowing to have a 14.95 rear yard setback instead of 35 feet, just for clarification. And I'll get into that when we go through.
Okay. If you don't have anything to add, if there's no other questions right now, we can turn it over to Hank.
Yeah, we whatever, and then of course, you're free to answer any questions that we may have or may arise as a result of this.
Sure.
And then the owner obviously can have an opportunity to speak at any point in time. So if you're okay with that?
Yep.
That's okay. So basically what we have here is an appeal from Ken Katz for variance to the rear yard setback requirements, which are listed in section 40-4.03 R1A through R1E, one family districts. Schedule of regulations to exceed the rear yard setback of 35 feet by having only a 14.95 foot rear yard setback for the purpose of an addition to an existing non-conforming building. And again, the following should be considered in determining whether a variance is the best solution. The first criteria necessary is special or unique conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, which are not generally applicable to other land, structures, or building in the same district. And as you take a look at the property, and I did put the site plan up there, and you can see in this area over here that this is where the addition is, and this is the rear yard. Because this determines where the rear yard is, we've taken that, the survey was necessary to determine that because you take the lease frontage and you go from there. So that makes this the backyard, and what happens is that now he has to get that approved. So you really have to make this determination on the lot size, the proposed house size, configuration, or other relevant criteria. The lot is an extremely irregular peninsula shape and it fronts on Roy Court. The house does not have conventional lot lines or structural locations on the lot, and as a result, Mr. Katz cannot add on to his house in almost any direction without a variance, even though his house meets the maximum house size requirements. So that handles the first one, or at least that's our interpretation of the first. The second is the variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. There's been no adverse communication to this point from this at all. And three, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from actions of the applicant. This is the self-created standard. The house and its configuration on the lot has been proven problematic for Mr. Katz. He created neither issue and wishes to avail himself of the square footage that he's allowed by code. In other words, he can have this square footage. It's just a question of where he can put it if he can't put it here. So this meets the flow of the house. No matter where he was going to go with this, he would have needed a variance. So this is not only the best place to put it, it also is a logical place to put it, but it does present him with a situation where he's going to need this variance in order to have it located in that spot. And the fourth criteria, which is a literal interpretations of the provision of this ordinance, would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance, and the variance is the minimum necessary. Most conventionally shaped lots afford the possibility of an addition as long as the maximum house size is adhered to. Here it's not the case. The spot for the addition with respect to the house is traditional in nature, yet the placement creates the issue. So he's got the square footage, he just can't put it anywhere, and this goes with the flow as is noted by the existing building that's there right now. So if you take a look at that, and it's not significantly bigger than the existing building, but the placement still creates that. Now, why isn't it just 6 inches? Because as soon as you tear down the building, you've eradicated the non-conforming situation. So once you do that, you have to get the whole project approved, because the thing with non-conforming structures and non-conforming uses is that eventually they're expected to go away. So because this is already here, this is a situation where he has, and they're not going to put a 6-inch addition onto the existing house. Practically, they have to go ahead and remove it and put in the new addition in a homogeneous manner, which is what Mr. Lucchese is trying to do. So that is pretty much answers some questions. So what you basically have is a motion to grant, a motion to deny, a motion to grant in part, a motion to, somewhere in between. So the questions are yours, the floor is yours. I'll answer to the extent I can, as I'm sure that Rick could also do the same.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding. So, they get rid of the if they got rid of the non-conforming area of the house, Hank, they'd have this extra they'd have allowable maximum square footage to add onto the house, regardless of how the house flows. Is there anywhere on the property that they could add it without getting a variance?
You can't put it in the side yard, which goes towards Wales. You can't put it in the other side yard because there's no room and you would need a variance. You can't put it in the front yard because you won't meet front yard setbacks. So no matter where it goes, you're needing a variance. So this is the least obtrusive place, and it matches their flow. Excuse me, of
It
their
matches
house.
what's currently there, even though it's
Yes.
not conforming.
Right.
It's the main artery of the house as well. So there'd have to be major, reconstruction, the whole.
Architecturally,
Architecturally,
this is where it works.
Right, I'm even saying, regardless architecturally how it works, they wanted to add anywhere on their lot, they'd have to
Absolutely.
be here.
They didn't want to redo this. That structure could sit there non-conforming forever.
In
until it fell down.
perpetuity, yes.
So then, in effect, this is really a request for a 6-inch variance.
Yeah, if they were just going to keep it there, logically that's not the way to build this, which necessitates the entire variance. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. If he was going to put a 6-inch extension onto that, that would be the extent of the variance he needed.
So you're taking the whole thing down, just building the
Conform to building standards of today. But the 50s when the house was built, so yes.
Just a point of information, it's not only Ken Katz, it's Ann Katz and Ken Katz.
Just went with the name on the application.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I have to let it
Or then it's going to be Ken Katz, not Ken Katz. I mean, this to me is a classic. You can't enjoy what your neighbors are enjoying, and you can cause the problem. I don't see anything problematic about writing this. It's kind of why we're here. Right, you got a situation that they didn't create, but they can't have what their neighbors have. It's a shape of their lot.
Is there anyone from the public that's here. I'm gonna open this appeal up to public participation.
Hi, I'm Paula Zandstein. I
Could
live.
you step up to the microphone, please? We won't pick you up otherwise, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Paula Zandstein. I live Kitty Corner, and I think the addition is going to be an advantage to the neighborhood too. I think I've been in the house many, many times, and it's a zoning plus.
For the record, ma'am, could we get your address?
25101 West Breakford.
Thank you.
Kitty Corner from Mitch, and Kitty Corner from Don.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wants to speak on this appeal? With that, I'm going to close public participation on this appeal and open it up to discussion amongst the board. Any other discussion? Or looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to grant the appeal for 25, excuse me, 105 West Ray Court for a variance from section 40-4.03-R1A through R1E, one family district, schedule of regulations to exceed the rear setback of 35 feet by having a 14.95 foot rear yard setback for the purpose of an addition to an existing non-conforming building as it generally meets the requirements for a dimensional variance and a practical difficulty has been established.
Second. Second, Mike. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous, Hank.
Okay, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Next up is an appeal from Joan Schwartz, 13128 Ludlow, for a variance to exceed the maximum allowed lot coverage of 30% over and above the existing variance approved amount by 40.1% by an additional 2.6%, for a total of 42.7%. Go ahead, Ms. Schwartz.
Okay. So, the difference between a pergola and a gazebo is the function of the roof. A gazebo will provide full coverage from the sun, while a pergola allows for the sunlight to shine through. This was a total misunderstanding on my part. I chose the gazebo because for the shelter, I've had some precancerous moles removed, and my doctor suggested is stay out of the sun as much as I can. So, knowing that, that's why I chose that. I'm truly sorry, and I apologize. It was my oversight. I never thought that, this structure in the yard had anything to do with the roof. I didn't think that far. So, I'm trying to improve the condition of my yard, which has deteriorated badly over the years, and give it a whole new look. So I'm asking for an additional variance of 2.6%, so I don't have to remove the structure. I do have I was away and I didn't get a chance to pass these out, which basically is, the top one is the structure that is existing now, and then there's a few other choices that have, one of them has a polyester roof on it. So I don't know if you want to look at those. And then there's a picture of a pergola. So I don't know if that makes a difference, and you want to.
Well, I want to back up a little.
Okay.
Understand the situation. So you already were non-conforming, correct? Over.
Well, they were granted a variance, so they had a 10% variance. It was 10.1% variance that the Zoning Board of Appeals gave them for kind of a living in place addition to the back part of their house. Currently, well, without getting into the whole report, which I'm going to defer to Mrs. Schwartz for her portion of the meeting, but basically it's already 10% over on a variance. So this is a variance in addition to an existing variance that was just granted.
So you wanna add you already put a gazebo out there?
Yeah.
Put it up, I did not know.
All right, is this a picture of it, or is this,
There was no
Yes.
permit with it either.
I'm just trying to understand the
No,
situation.
that is exactly what's up.
Okay,
And then, I do have a couple of photos of gazebo, but that has a fabric roof and not a hard roof.
and what, is this like, how is this affixed to this, is it just sitting on top?
It's in cement footings.
Right.
No, it's not fixed.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
GG Goldberg, Goldie's Landscaping, hello, David. Currently, the gazebo is not fixed at all. It's sitting on top of, 21 AA crushed concrete, waiting for approval or not approval from you guys, based on which we will set it into the gravel, place new brick pavers on top of it, and it could be removed almost at any time, given the right amount of labor.
So this was basically put up on the yard, this was not put up on an existing patio?
Correct. We built a patio, and we are placing it, trying to get it placed into the patio.
So Hank, if this was if they had a patio off the back of the house poured, that would have counted as lot coverage, and that's put a gazebo on it, wouldn't matter, right?
The patio would not count as lot coverage. There's two things at play here. One is the total lot coverage, which is 30% of the lot, which is the area that we're having a problem with right now. The second is that the rear yard can only have 50% covered by structures. There's a difference between what the 50% is, what comprises the 50%, and what comprises the 30%. The 30% is anything that's covered by a roof, whether it's house, garage, shed, carport, pick all of them and add that together, that's what you get. For a rear yard, patios, garages, driveways, pergolas, anything like that would also count. But because it has a roof, whether it's going to be hard or fabric or whatever it is, it still counts as lot coverage.
So we don't differentiate between a pergola and a gazebo?
We do not. There's two things at play there.
Accurate has a roof.
So there is two. The thing is that you have a situation where you have a pergola that we never got an application for, so we don't have the accurate dimensions for it. We don't have an accurate drawing for it. All we have is what you received. So the dimensions that we have, I don't have a cut sheet. I don't have any of that at this point. So, and if we would have had a permit for it, we would have had that information and it would have been flagged right off the bat. The issue that becomes is that you can have two accessory structures on a site. You can have one garage up to 650 square feet, or carport. Her garage is already 800 some square feet, 829 square feet, which created part of the problem, which is part of the reason that she was given the variance in the first place. And you can have one accessory structure not to exceed 100 square feet.
Like a shed or something?
Pick one, a shed, a pergola, whatever it is. So, depending on what the plans are and what's accurate and what we have for that, there may be yet another issue with this, and I don't know that because I don't have any blueprints or any plans for it or anything like that. We have rough dimensions on it. So the thing with it is that there's two different things working here. So one is that if you grant her the variance for that particular lot coverage, then you're going to, she's going to have to come in and get a building permit and whatever. If you don't grant it, it has to come down. And there's really no, there's a couple sides to the coin. One is it's already there, but that shouldn't be a determining factor. What should be a determining factor is if they have criteria for the variance that meets the four standards. And it depends, I can get into that if you want, or we'd certainly let them finish their presentation.
Yeah, why don't we let I say, if we could scroll up on this to get back to the picture of the actual gazebo. According to you, this whole thing is about the roof, right?
No,
I thought it was the coverage of the hard.
it's the roof and it's also the size of the accessory structure, but I don't have a plan for the accessory structure.
When you say accessory structure,
The pergola.
Wait a minute.
There's a
12 by
difference.
16 feet.
Could you help us, Hank, with some definition?
Yes.
I'm really getting confused.
Okay.
Is this thing, that's a picture of, is that a pergola?
That's what we're calling pergola, yes.
It's not a gazebo.
I would
A
consider,
gazebo.
Is there any difference?
I'll make it simpler, it's an accessory structure.
All right, so we get rid of all these Italian words, et cetera, and just
by definition, a
Call
pergola
it a
doesn't have a
structure.
roof.
But I think,
It's an accessory
but
structure.
for our, let me say, for our code, the roof is what really differentiates, or does it not differentiate against?
If that was
Well,
10
that's
by
only
10.
one of two of the problems, right?
Yeah, if that was 10 by 10 and it had like slatted roof on it, like you see a lot of those things like that, that would not be considered, that would be considered an accessory structure and not count in lot coverage because it's part of the rear yard. It wouldn't count in lot coverage. As soon as there's a roof on it, it counts as lot coverage. Doesn't matter whether the roof is paper, fabric, or metal, or wood.
And that counts against the 30 for the entire lot,
That is correct.
but not the, and the 50?
That is correct.
You could hypothetically take
It
the
counts in-
panels off of that roof, and it's exactly what you're describing, aside from the size.
But it's not, and it's there.
well,
How did this come to the attention of the city, out of curiosity?
Neighbor concerns.
just again, to understand this clearly, does it matter if the roof has holes in it or not?
Yes.
And suppose they drilled a few holes in this roof, would it change the analogy?
If they did it substantially, I would say that the way that we would determine that if that was more than 50% open, other than the size, which we'd have to determine based on a blueprint, which would have to be submitted, then it could qualify for something that would not be counted. Like,
But you're saying the standard would be 50% open?
at least, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have the calculations for how this counts against the 30 and 50%?
Well, the 30% is what we're concerned with. The 50% doesn't matter because our calculations came up that it wasn't going to be over the 50% of the rear yard.
All right, so
But it is over
the total
30%.
lot coverage.
Right. It comes to 42.7% with the proposed gazebo, proposed accessory structure being 192 square feet and comprising another 2.6%.
Total lot coverage, which really doesn't matter if there's a roof or no roof, correct?
It matters if there's a roof for the 30% because the criteria for the 30% is anything with a roof.
My problem is I have a huge driveway with a two-car carport, and that counts as part of my house.
It counts as part of the lot coverage.
Yeah, so,
Well, I think we did this exercise on the last appeal where if we took where we did the hypothetical where you remove the carport, does that get us there? And, we talked about that it wasn't practical and all this, but I guess, Hank, do you have that sort of analysis? Like if the carport were removed, does she still suffer from the lot coverage issue?
I can, if it's all right with you then, if they're done, I'll go ahead with what I had.
Do you guys have anything further, or I say, unless you have any questions for me about the project in general? Nothing. Does anyone on the board have questions now, or should we turn over to Hank?
I have a question
Go ahead,
for the
Sure.
applicant.
Go ahead.
What is your case? I think the city lays out the standards for granting a
Of course.
variance fairly clearly.
I understand.
What is the case for
my-
granting the variance in accordance with the standards?
So, my case is just for or against if you want to call it, I think that there is a difference between a pergola and a gazebo. A gazebo. Pergola has slatted roofs with no, if you look at that picture, you could take off the sections of the roof and it wouldn't be a covered structure. And yes, it is a little bit over the 10 by 10 that Hank is talking about, but it's essentially exactly what he's describing. It just has a fixed roof on it. That is the biggest argument that I can
That's a
make
case
about
for building something different. That would have
I
to
can
be
show you
looked
a
at differently.
picture if you want to see a picture of a pergola.
I don't think, but
Okay.
you're not proposing to
Well, I'm saying that if I had a pergola
I say, would it make a
with the
difference if it was
slatted
something?
roof, yeah.
Well, we're sort of forced to look at the regulation,
Of course.
I mean, I'm looking
like them or not.
I'm looking at the guidance that we get, right? So number one, special or unique conditions and circumstances exist, which are peculiar to the land structure of the building. I have not heard a case why this is a unique, peculiar circumstance.
Well, it was a mistake that I purchased it and put it up because it didn't dawn on me, so I guess I'm asking, since it's there,
I get it.
make me take it down then.
The second is welfare variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to general welfare. I guess you can argue that either way. The reason we're here is because somebody complained about it, it sounds like. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the action of the applicant. It sounds to me like they do.
Well, I
result
have other statements from other neighbors that have approved it.
Right. The literal interpretation of provisions of this ordinance would deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. I mean, I guess the attitude that I take is I want to prove, as we're all neighbors, I want to prove everything. But you got to give us a reason why to approve it, you know?
I don't know how much you want me to say here because I don't know if this is the place to say it.
Well,
I mean, it probably isn't, but.
I think it's not, but,
that's up to you. I mean,
I do not know why they complained, because they have refused to respond to me, and so I have no idea.
and I want to be fair though, it's like, that's not, in my mind, that important.
Okay.
You make the case that why you're being denied something that your neighbors should have, or there's a unique situation that you didn't create that
Well, there
you're
is.
trying to fix. So,
Hank, are you gonna, one,
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Let's let Hank go, and then we'll have public participation, and we'll open it back up.
Okay, so basically, kind of reiterate a little bit about what David said. You know, you have 4 criteria. You're looking for a variance to exceed the maximum allowed lot coverage of 30% over and above the existing variance that was just approved in total amount of 40.1%. So they've already received a 10.1% variance for an additional 2.6% for now a total of 42.7%. The following should be considered in determining whether a variance is the best solution. Special or unique conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, which are not generally applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. There's no special circumstances that really come to mind here when we looked at it. The variance was very clear when it was granted that it was for, you know, an additional 10.1%. It wasn't asked for at that time. It was put together and installed without a building permit. Had it come for a building permit, it would have been denied. So that's part of the problem that you have with this. Then second, the variance will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare. There have been concerns from neighbors with respect to her already being over and granted a variance and now asking for more. And I did include a letter of support as well as a letter of non-support for you, and that was placed at your spaces. You should have all seen that. And then 3, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from actions of the applicant. Again, this is a self-created portion of the approval status. And then it says, I can't make a case for that. They're asking for something. They had the house, they had the variance, and now they're asking for an additional variance to the variance. Part of the concerns with this also stem from another situation with the house and the use of space, which isn't really the special concern, the special conditions, but the space's use and the space that the outside could be used for. Ms. Schwartz runs classes out of her house, which is not a permitted use. And part of the issue with that is that would this back patio be used for external or exterior space or anything like that for classes? The issue with that still has to be determined as far as the use of the house for this type of commercial application. 4, a literal interpretation of the provision of this ordinance would deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance, and the variance is the minimum necessary. I think that the appellant's property already exceeds the allowable lot coverage. The structure was erected without a permit, and the applicant knew that there had to be a variance for it because they were granted a variance for the exact same thing, which is lot coverage, a few months ago. Whether she recognized that this was part of it or not, I don't know, and I can't speak to that. But it's likely that they would have known based on having gone through this experience once already. Additionally, the approved addition for the gallery office is being used as a business and is not a permitted use for the zone district. And we have issued a cease operations letter for that. So having said that, part of the problem is not only what the use is for the house for the variance that was granted, but what can spill out into an exterior use of it, which is also not permitted. So unless the case is made for sufficiently for your concerns to allay your fears and your concerns, my suggestion with this is that you take this on face value for what it is. Certainly hear what Ms. Schwartz and her accompaniment has to say, and then also listen to the neighbors and listen to, public participation and see what it is. Again, it's an ask on top of an ask, so you have to be considerate of that when you do deliberate and ultimately rule on this.
Can I just add
Yes,
something?
Go ahead. Can you
Okay.
step back just
Sorry.
for the microphone?
Number one, I've never seen the letter of complaint. And number two, I think that what I did with the room in my classes, which are friends that we work together, has nothing to do with this variance that I'm asking for. It's two totally separate things. And I'm not teaching any classes, took down my website, so, that's all taken care of.
Here's a copy.
Hank has a copy of it.
Thank you.
Let's open it up to public participation. Are there members from the public who would like to speak in? So please step forward. Say your name and address, right, Hank?
Yes,
The
please.
addresses.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Waldman, and I live at 13124 Ford Ludlow, the property immediately to the east of Ms. Schwartz's. Our primary concern here is the lot coverage issue has created runoff issues for water. We never saw it. We supported her request for a variance for the addition of her art studio, which, if you recall, she largely sort of, I think, posited as an aging-in-place opportunity for her. So we were then a little surprised when she started advertising rent classes out of that space. Nonetheless, we supported her and said, no problem, with the additional lot coverage, which at that point was an additional, I believe, 10.1%. And truthfully, she never discussed adding this accessory structure. It is, as you can see, as best as I think Hank has been able to determine without specific plans presented, provides an additional 2.6% of lot coverage, which is significant. We have runoff issues. We have a wet backyard. We've always had a wet backyard. And since she's put it in and graded it in the very rainy season, I have a picture of my phone on my phone this morning showing we have significant runoff now onto our property. There's been no additional drainage plan or any consideration for that at all. That is our primary concern with this, is how it impacts drainage. And again, I think it's a little bit complicated because there's multiple issues here. Obviously, there is the total 30% lot coverage. She already received a variance, and we supported that, of over 10%. Now she's asking for more. And as Hank noted, she didn't apply for a permit, and she brought her landscaper with her here today, who I believe is quite familiar with Huntington Woods procedure, has done a lot of work in Huntington Woods, and it seems very interesting to me that she chose not to apply for the variance when she put up the building. Moreover, it's interesting, one of the things Hank was talking about is the 50% lot coverage in the backyard, which is different than the 30% overall lot lot coverage. And so you can have up to 50%, as I understand it, 50% of your backyard can be quote-unquote hardscape. Now, interestingly, and Hank said he did the quick calculation, and even with the accessory structure, it comes in under 50%. But I think that the analysis really should be, we already gave her 10%. So you have to consider the fact that her backyard is already reduced by the addition of that by the addition of the addition that she got the variance for and the building permit for. So her backyard is already smaller than it should be. And now we're saying she can put up to 50% lot cover or hardscape coverage over it. I honestly think that calculation is incorrect, and that you need to take into consideration the fact that she already has additional lot coverage by virtue of the previous variance that you granted. No one has raised that here, but I do bring that to your attention. And then finally, as to the accessory structure, as Hank noted, you're allowed up to 2 structures on your property because she has the carport. She's allowed 1 additional structure. And the code is very specific. The ordinance is very specific in Chapter 40, 6.03, capital B sub 1, that it cannot be larger than 100 square feet. So by whatever has been submitted here, this is significantly larger. I think Hank estimated it at 196 square feet, or what is it identified as 12 by 16 feet, whatever that calculation turns out to be. We have tremendous concerns about the drainage issues. That is our primary concern. It significantly impacts our property. We have a very close driveway. All of this runoff comes directly onto my property, and her backyard is covered tremendously with all forms of hardscape now, including the patio and the hardscape that was built underneath the accessory structure, the accessory structure itself, some pathways that she's put in. There's almost no green space in her backyard. Thank you.
If the drainage issue was solved, would you still have a problem?
I think so. I do. I think it's more than drainage. I don't know that you can even completely address the drainage. I mean, her lot coverage is so far over what the city standard is, truthfully, that it ends up also being aesthetic on a lot of levels. I think the lot coverage of 30% exists for a reason, so that we don't become an overbuilt city, so that people don't have matchbook-sized yards. And unfortunately, that's really what we're living next to, is something with 0 green space. I don't know how to address the drainage, and it really shouldn't be my responsibility to come up with a plan. I think that the ordinance is in place and should be respected for that purpose. So I would request that this board deny the additional request for an appeal.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public here that wants to speak?
I would speak to that.
Well, hang on. Are you a member of the public? Do you live on the block?
No, I'm her.
You're advising her? Let me just see if there's anyone else from the public here, and then we'll close that, and then you guys can
of course
have another opportunity to speak. Is there anyone else from the public here that would like to participate? Seeing none, I will close public participation. And go ahead.
My response to that is, you all live in Huntington Woods. I understand that this may be a drainage problem. You could go to, arguably, every single property in Huntington Woods and say that there's a drainage problem. We live on clay and terrible, terrible soil. I deal with drainage problems that have absolutely nothing to do with hardscaping or anything else. Huge open grass backyards that have terrible drainage. I just think that I understand it may or may not have gotten worse. I don't know if there's any proof as to what she's saying is accurate or not. But you could make an argument that every single house in Huntington Woods has some kind of drainage issue.
I think that's exactly why we're trying to prevent more of the problem. Did you mention you worked for Goldie's?
I work for Goldie's, yes.
In theory, could you fix the drainage problem with 100 drains and?
Yep. I think it's easily fixable with the right manpower and,
I also think it
yeah,
depends.
we do
on-
French drains and drainage work all the time.
But we can't grant a variance on that condition.
I just kind of, in the spirit of if these percentages are geared more for water than aesthetics, and, you know, this is maybe more of a master plan conversation, but, you know, could you allow somebody to have more hardscape or covered or whatever if they mitigate their own water problem? Just a thought.
I think that still doesn't meet one of our requirements, though, for requirements for approval.
Right.
That's what I'm struggling with personally.
The order of the business, are we gonna have back and forth for a
Well,
while?
and it's really up to the board's discussion now, but if we have questions, we can, Ms. Schwartz, if you have anything
yeah,
to say,
so I
but then
would-
the board has to discuss, and if we have questions, we're gonna address those questions.
Okay, can I
Go ahead.
address the drainage problem? I am sure that they pulled a permit several years ago when they had a very bad drainage problem and they put all new PVC under their backyard, and then they put in a generator because they've had a water problem for years, nothing to do with my property. So I'm just saying that I resent that I'm being blamed for this water, and Gigi filled the dirt in there to make it more even than it was before we did anything back there. And these complaints go beyond what I have done because they're angry with me, for which I don't know, but I think I know.
Well, we're not here to settle that.
All right, so I just want to tell you that the water issue is not due to what I've done.
Okay, no, that's noted. Go ahead. And then we're gonna open this up to board discussion. Go ahead, Mitch. No, public participation's been
But
closed.
do I get to, do I not get to respond?
It's not cross-examining,
No,
is it, tonight?
no.
And it's not what we're making the decision based on
Okay,
anyway.
okay. then, because-
Yeah, I would like to just to lead off the thinking about this. The issue, I mean, we often get into a situation on the board where we've got a neighbor dispute. My own feeling is that our decision here is not going to turn on the issues brought up by either the neighbor support or the neighbor opposition, even though we take it into account. And we're certainly not going to try to adjudicate some type of issue relating to drainage and the causes, etc. It's not, and the reason I say that confidently because it strikes me that no case has been made on basic principles under the zoning law for granting a variance. So we don't have to get into the fine points of whether there really is a strong argument for a variance, but some concerns about adverse drainage impacts exist that could be mitigated by some type of revision to the plan. Just from beginning to end, what I hear is I want to have more space dedicated to a building or structure in the backyard than is legally entitled, with no reason given for that is convincing in terms of the standards that we have to apply. There's been ample opportunity to make the case.
Got nothing to add to that.
I guess, Hank, take a scenario where she applied for it before building it, said it would have been denied, but could she then appealed it to us anyways?
She could have at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that
I
matters.
don't think that matters, I just want to understand. Yeah.
Whether it's there or not is really irrelevant. What's there is that if you want to grant her the additional variance to put it there, if you don't grant her the variance, it comes down. It's as simple as that. If they would have applied for a permit and they would have been told no. So it's not anything that the city would have done to mitigate it. It's like if they would have come in and put in the application with the required drawings and the that, we would have known, and we could have made a difference. We could have at that point in time stopped this and rerouted it to a point where it might have met the criteria that the city needs in order to have that. That didn't happen. So basically, because of the type of structure it is and the roof that it is and the way that it's built and, you know, everything like where it's placed on the lot, you have you're exceeding the 40.1% that now the lot has been granted to the additional 10.1 plus the 30% for an additional 2.6%, so this could stay. If that's what you would like to do, then that's what you do. If it's not, then you would vote no on something like that, assuming a motion would be forthcoming.
All right, and I guess I want to make it clear in thinking about why we approve stuff or deny stuff. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you have a previous variance. I mean, obviously you came in here and convinced the board that you had a hardship or you met one of the 4 standards and it made sense. The fact that a neighbor or neighbors are unhappy, I think that's a teeny tiny bit. Again, it's the 4, what are the criteria? Whether it's after the fact or before the fact, again, it doesn't really matter as it relates to any of the criteria. I can't make a biased decision because it's already there or not already there. That wouldn't be fair. And again, same thing goes with drainage. We don't have a topographical plan. We're not drainage experts. And if we did, I wouldn't know how to read it. It's not what we're trained to do or why we're here. Now the question to me, again, does it meet any of these standards? And I've not heard, as much as I want to hear, because I want to hear help neighbors, I haven't heard how we meet any of those standards. I cannot approve it without meeting those standards. I mean, it would be completely arbitrary. So with that in mind, I'm motioning to deny the request. So that is a motion. So here, I'll give you a. Well, I mean, I guess the reason I motion to deny as none of the requirements for a variance have been proven to the board. Yeah, it's that simple. I mean, I've been on this board, I think, 4 or 5 years, and I don't ever remember motioning to deny, but I haven't heard anything, as much as I want to hear it, that gives us cause to say you're meeting the requirements for variance. So that's the motion.
I second. May I explain the second?
Go ahead, Mitch.
Just to be very clear, and I think David has somewhat said it. The issue of a possibly illegitimate use of the property does not figure in this decision.
No, not at all.
It's a separate issue. I agree with the applicant. The fact that there was a previous variance should not be viewed that this is a second ask, which I think prejudices the applicant's position. Once the variance is approved, that's the legal.
Right. The purpose of bringing that up is to show that it's already over lot coverage.
Right.
And the reason
But I think
for
it does figure in as follows, which is that the fact that you have a greater degree of lot coverage already, even though it is lawful because a variance was granted, makes the additional amount even more impactful, I would say, as to the circumstances. But it's not the notion that, well, you came here once and now you're coming here again and it kind of annoys us. That's not what's being said here. And the third thing, in terms of the fact that this was built without a permit and without coming for a variance when it should have been done, in my mind, the concern for our policy is that no one should expect sympathy from the board because it creates a hardship of having to take down a structure you already built. Because that would be a recipe for getting something passed by the board, which is go and build it and then try to intimidate the board from asking you to tear it down. So it's clearly we're not going to ratify on the basis that it's already built. That is the basis for, I just want to clarify that I'm seconding in order to support the motion, but to make it clear why and why not the basis for voting that way.
Any other discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion? Aye. All opposed?
Okay, so for the record, Bree's opposed to the motion to deny. Everybody else is in support of the motion to deny, so the motion is therefore denied. Or the motion to deny is,
Motion to deny.
motion to deny is approved.
All right, now we move on to other business.
At this point in time, the only other business I have is that we anticipate for the time being that all the meetings will still be in person. Again, I want to emphasize that we're doing everything that we can that we believe we can supply as far as cleaning materials, cleaning crews that come in before the meeting so that when the public comes in, we put our best foot forward as far as trying to make sure that everybody is safe to the extent we possibly can. And it will continue to be so in that manner. If anybody has questions or concerns, I will send out a questionnaire to see what they, to see what the board feels about what we should or should not be doing going forward, or if there's any other accommodations that we can make to make people feel more safe. You can expect to see that in your email tomorrow. Other than that, I have nothing further at this point in time.
Thanks, Hank. Open it up to general public participation. Seeing none, I will close public participation and look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Joe. Second? Bree? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you all for
Thanks,
coming.
Hank.